Alright, where do I even start with this? After the releases of Colors, Generations, and Lost World, and boom, but that game was a whole separate deal that I'm not going to discuss right now. Sonic had shown a very light-hearted tone that, well, let's just be honest, was not well handled or well written. Then when we got the teaser for the next mainline game, it instantly showcased a much darker tone than we had seen in a while. Death Egg robots everywhere, a destroyed city on fire, I'm panning over to reveal Sonic standing in the distance and oh look! He looks angry. That's something we haven't really seen in a while, kinda. I'm not gonna lie and say that this didn't have me interested, and the gameplay that came afterwards showcasing Sonic running through city ruins with Death Egg robots in the background looked genuinely cool. The premise of this game was honestly perfect, and the shift in tone from
Baldy nose hair
to
you and everyone you know are dead. All of you. Because you can't survive it. It's not possible unless you're very, very lucky. And your kids die too.
Was a welcome change if handled well. Following the game's announcement, there were several more trailers showcasing characters, stages, and story moments, and while there wasn't a massive amount of variety in the clips shown, what was shown still looked exciting. And then launch day came. As a massive Sonic fan, I picked the game up day one, and well, I think we all know what followed. First off, what the game was advertised as is kinda bullshit, from the team that brought you Colors and Generations. Funny that they didn't mention Lost World.
One more thing, Eugene, give me that. If I ever find one of these lying around again, I swear to fucking God, I will stop being so polite. Get the fuck out of my sight before I demolish you.
I know this was done to indicate, hey, you like those, so don't worry about this one, but playing it makes it clear that this game had a very troubled development cycle and was rushed out, which hurts even more after having to wait 4 years in between mainline titles. A complaint that was going on at the time was that for the past couple of titles, Sonic's friends were pushed more to the side, and it mostly became the Sonic and Tails show. And while they have a good dynamic, when it's well written of course, you really start to miss these idiots because Sonic has a really good supporting cast. Instead of getting to play as any of them, you play as Sonic with a gimmick attached, be that the Werehog, Wisps, or himself with Schmoll. Oh, and let's not forget parkour! With Tails running support, and maybe Amy and Knuckles if you're lucky. Now, I'm not completely counting Generations because of Sonic's history and cast baked into it for obvious reasons, and mostly looking at the other entries, and while they were present in that game in a limited capacity, no one but the Sonics were actually playable. So it was a welcome sight to see that we were going to get multiple playable characters, and logically they would have improved upon the gameplay of Sonic Generations, which was already fun as hell. Except they didn't because they were developing the Hedgehog engine too, which means that they basically made it from scratch, and boy does it show. First of all, Modern Sonic is honestly the best part of this game, which isn't saying much. The boost returns instead of the parkour system from Lost World. Holding a button allows Sonic to boost, making him go even faster, giving him a big blue boost aura, distorting the music, and allowing him to dash through enemies. You can replenish your boost by either homing attacking or dashing through enemies, or by running through a white wisp pod, and I don't know if this is controversial, but I don't have any problem with the wisps apart from that they are a bit overused. But other than that, I have absolutely zero problem with these guys. A comment that I sometimes see is that the boost games are just boost to win, which isn't true, but if there was any game where this gets close to it, it's this one. Playing as Modern Sonic is heavily reliant on the boost, and the game will do anything in its power to keep you boosting. Either that means tossing a dozen boost pods, or 100 enemies in a cluster for you to run through, just so that you won't stop boosting. Which is a big problem with this game. Enemies are not a threat. Their only purpose is to stand in place, do nothing, and die for your boost. No, the real threat for you isn't any of the hundreds of enemies that are placed in front of you. No. It's the physics, because my god, the physics suck. As previously mentioned, Sonic has a homing attack that is very fast and snappy, but kills any momentum you might have had, and that's not even talking about his jump. Jumping is honestly terrifying at times, because if you try to platform in this game, it's like praying to Jesus that you don't miss a platform and fall into the abyss because of how shitty and floaty it is to control him. Also, did you know that Sonic has a double jump in this game? Well, actually he doesn't, because if you jump a second time, you will hop up a millimeter and gain no advantage, making you question its very existence. Coming back to the boost and how messy these physics are, the game will do everything in its power to keep you on the set path, and it will put in as many linear hallways, quick control removing segments, and all the boost pads in the world to keep you there. And if you try to move out of that path, you will get sky launched into the stratosphere, never to be seen again. I won't lie and say that it doesn't feel satisfying to boost through waves of enemies, but I'm not getting challenged in any way, and the linear level design does nothing to help it. Before moving on, I also want to touch on his music. Each of the 3 playable characters have their own style of music for their stages, and Modern Sonic's are these synthy tracks that range from pretty good to sorta meh, which is a little disappointing, I'm not gonna lie. The second playable character was honestly a very big surprise when it got announced, because it wasn't any of Sonic's friends. No Tails, Knuckles, Amy, Vector, or nothing. No, it was an avatar. Now, I know that Sonic has a reputation of fans making original characters.
Stop. You're pure evil. Why are you coloring my arms?
But it seemed like a genuinely cool idea, and this character was actually going to be a part of the story. Now, how the avatar works is that you can select an animal species as a base, and each species has a specific trait attached to it, like attracting rings, double jumping, or being able to take an extra hit. You can then deck them out with some basic attire, and one of the cool things about this game is that you'll constantly be unlocking things for your avatar by simply playing levels, so then you can end up with masterpieces like this. As mentioned before, the Wisps return and play a major part in the avatar's gameplay since you get a new tool called a Wispon, which is basically a fancy gun. There are a total of 7 types of Wispons. Burst, which is a flamethrower and has a burst jump. Lightning, which has a whip and can lightspeed dash through rings. Cube, which has a cube hammer and a tower stack. Drill, which has a drill rush and a drill dash. Void, which has a black hole shot and a warp. Hover, which has an air blast and, well, hover ability, and finally Asteroids, which has homing decoys and an invincibility field. There are also variants of these Wispons to collect with trades attached to them to give them some more variety. You start with Burst and unlock the rest by playing, but regardless of which one you pick, enemies pose no threat to you. You will melt through any threat regardless of your Wispon, but I'd honestly say that you should just keep your Burst from the beginning, because it is objectively the best one. The Flamethrower melts anything easy without having to lose your momentum, and the Burst is very well rounded. It can take out anything in a straight line or when you're surrounded easily, where most of the others struggle in either or of these situations, and apart from Lightning giving you small windows of invulnerability on its attack, and Drill being good for speedrunning, I genuinely see no reason not to use Burst throughout the entire game. You can even cheese bosses with it, which is just cheap. The avatar also has access to a grappling hook, which you use to grapple onto certain circles for traversal, or to use an inferior version of Sonic's homing attack. Like Sonic, the avatar's physics are pretty bad and is really annoying to control in non-linear sections. Lastly, touching on their music, the avatar's levels consist of some pretty sweet vocal tracks that I wish there were more of throughout the game. There's also one more gameplay style I'd quickly want to touch on, and that's Tag Team. Certain levels you can play as both Sonic and your avatar, and while a cool idea in theory, the execution, just like most parts of this game, is poor. You know what's worse than controlling one character with poor physics? 2 characters with poor physics, and the only addition that this gameplay style has is that you can enter double boost, where you spam the boost button to wind up your epic friendship move and dash through a barrage of enemies. Also, there is no penalty to this, since if you fail to wind up or run out of boost, you stumble for a couple of seconds, and then just boost as normal, so what does it really even matter? And the playable character I kept for last, which is very fitting, is Classic Sonic, because honestly, last is what he feels like in this game. Like an afterthought. Now you already know that modern Sonic isn't a progression of his gameplay from Generations, but oh boy, this guy is something completely different. After not only Generations, which was flawed but very fun, and Mania, which was excellent,
that has to be the most perfect way of eating a Philly steak. Fucking delicious.
You'd think it wouldn't be that different. I mean, it's 2D Classic Sonic, how could you fuck this up? Well, what we didn't know is that in between games, Classic Sonic was murdered and replaced by a brick with legs. A blue-painted, concrete piece of brick. Because holy shit, the physics and momentum of this guy are fucked. Like, what is this? What the fuck is this? The only good part is that he kept the jump dash from Mania, and of course it's worse in this game, because why wouldn't it be? Not even want to talk about how his stages are just the absolute worst in the entire game, and his music. You know that I said that I liked the other two's music for the most part? Yeah, well listen to this. What is this? It sounds like a cat is being castrated in the recording booth. This is something they would have used against soldiers in World War II. Including boss fights, there are 30 stages in the game, also having extra stages and DLC on the side. Going back to that, by the people who brought you Colors and Generations part, one part that absolutely did not come from them is the level design. Because unlike Colors and Generations, the level design in this game is way more linear and narrow, and that's because of the 3 people who worked on the level design. 2 of them are newcomers, and the one who had worked on a Sonic game before worked on Lost World. So yeah, that ain't good. Most of the levels in this game are way too short, averaging at about a minute and a half. 2 if you're lucky, and that's without really trying to speed through it. Something that the levels are kind of aware of, since in some of them they will pad out the time by including these cinematic sections with QuickTime events that you can't even fail, which usually tack on a good 15 to 30 seconds to the runtime, and sure, they're kinda cool the first time, but on repeats they are more annoying than anything else. The stages are split up into 7 worlds. Green Hill, because of course Green Hill, we can never go without Green Hill, am I right? Please make it stop. Going from looking normal to a desert look.
There's sand everywhere. Green Hill's looking a lot more like Sand Hill right now.
No!
There was also more concept art of it looking like a prison camp, which was honestly a bit of wasted potential. I would have been more okay with its return visualizing Sonic's world being taken over, but sadly they didn't do more with the idea. Chemical plant, because of course it comes back as well, but at least it has a more drastically different appearance, looking more like a frozen industrial factory. Apart from classics levels, of course. City, which is a bit standard, but still has a very fun aesthetic, which I wish had carried over more to the rest of the game. Mystic Jungle, which is my personal favorite, having these bright glowing plants with cool rock structures, while I'm not a personal fan of the added casino parts, which feels like a bit too much of a retread. The Death Egg, which is the only one I would have completely accepted returning, since it would be a part of the Eggman Empire's fleet, and the outside section with the giant space armada is really cool. And Metropolis, which looks fantastic. It feels very different from its version in Heroes, and the clean white aesthetic is just beautiful. Eggman Empire Fortress is honestly my least favorite. It has some cool structures, but most of it is very bland looking areas with large gray plains, and yes, you can say that's the point of what the world would look like if Eggman wins, but that still doesn't change that way more could have been done with the design. It also doesn't help that this stage holds the most bullshit levels in the game. Notice how I didn't really say most difficult. I specified most bullshit because the amount of stupid mechanics and random hazards they throw at you here is just dumb. I already briefly talked about the character music in this game, but I also quickly wanted to touch on both the main theme and Infinite's theme. The main theme of Forces is pretty good. While I do prefer the instrumental version, the vocal theme carries over the general theme of the game pretty well, and the upbeat part is pretty hype. Infinite's theme has no reason to go this hard. I still can't believe when this theme got released before the game and hearing the lyrics causing all the speculation about his character, giving it this grand tone of some tragic villain origin that turned him into this unstoppable monster. And then what we actually ended up getting? Yeah. Song still goes very hard nonetheless. Before I hop into the story section, I just want to mention that there were multiple comics released in addition to the game, which I'm gonna bring up when they become relevant to the current story part. You know, just so you know, and just that nobody thinks I'm leaving anything out. Speaking of, one of the comics shows Knuckles hanging out on Angel Island doing his regular old Guardian job when Silver pops up warning about a grave crisis that destroys the future. Then Chaos suddenly appears, attacking both of them. After a nice little bit of teamwork, Chaos disappears and they come to the conclusion that something grave is going to happen and will start to prepare. This also sets up Knuckles taking the leader role, I guess? It then pans out to Eggman floating above and revealing that this encounter was a test of his new weapon, the Phantom Ruby. And now on to the main story. We open on Eggman in his lab surrounded by fluid tanks while he monologues about how he's finally going to conquer the world with his latest invention, and the game immediately wants to establish a more serious tone than the last few games. We'll see if they can keep this up or not. And then pan over to a mysterious figure in one of the tanks. Moving on, Sonic is going through Green Hill. Of course Green Hill, because why not? Why isn't it just Green Hill? Of course, I always have to use Green Hill. Please just make it stop.
Man, look at the size of that thing. I guess all kinds of things show up when your neighborhood turns into a desert. Cleanup's gonna be a chore.
There's just giant worms now. This doesn't get brought up again and really doesn't matter at all. Arriving in the city, Sonic saves a couple of civilians and then starts bantering with Eggman.
Will be your finish, Sonic. Behold the power of my ultimate masterpiece.
Fuck you! You fucking...
Before getting blindsided.
Huh? Shadow. Faker. Zavok.
General Kenobi.
Hey, you want to see something cool?
Oh, shit.
What are you? How are you doing? Oh!
They don't make any sense.
Running out of time here, Tails.
I'm not kidding, after that scene, this text just pops up and we do a time skip. What the fuck? So Sonic got his ass whooped and got put in gamer jail, and without him, his friends are just fucking useless somehow, and Eggman and the villains curb stomped the entire planet into submission. Also, after that scene, you might have questions like, why is Chaos back? Why is Shadow evil? Who is this mysterious floaty guy? Why is Zavok back when no one gives a shit about him? Oh, don't worry, you're gonna get incredibly satisfying answers to all of these, trust me. You fool! We then see Sonic's friends all gathered in their resistance bunker, and this scene really highlights a big problem with this game, where they want the tone to be more serious and dark, but the only way the writers think to do this is by having everyone talk in a very monotone and overly dramatic way that you just can't take seriously.
Eggman's army is unstoppable. Without Sonic, the people are losing hope and giving into despair.
Despair is a luxury we don't have.
I still dream that Sonic is with us. Do you think he might be...
I'm an optimist, but I'm also a realist. Sonic is gone, Amy, and Tails has just lost it. If we're going to win, we have to do it without them.
Silver's right. We've been hoping for a miracle these past 6 months, but I'm afraid we have to make our own miracle.
Eggman's army has everyone terrified. If we want the people to rally, we have to show them that strength doesn't just come from numbers.
Don't get me wrong, it is nice to see them in a full story capacity though, that isn't just a white void. Amy, Silver, Vector, Espio, Charmy, and Rouge are all just here. They exist, and they kinda do stuff. Knuckles has taken the leader role, which I kinda like, putting some respect on my boy's name, but at the same time his personality has also been completely reverted to this generic, dramatic sounding guy.
Happy to see you're all still alive. Eggman's forces have chewed through our defenses at Green Hill, and the resistance in the city is reporting that whatever it is that finished Sonic... Sorry, I'm still not used to saying that. Whatever it is has got them running in fear.
Then we get to the best part.
Well, except
You wish you were as cool as me.
for this brave kid who survived the battle and made it here in one piece. Meet our newest recruit.
Doesn't look like much.
Neither do you, Charmy, but I still managed to find a use for your pointy butt. Here, kid, take this. We're depending on you. Okay, let's get going, everybody. The world's not gonna save itself.
Right!
Quickly want to slide in the prequel comic here where we see the Chaotix and some rando fighting off a robot attack. Not for a particular reason, this is more of a normal situation than the current world, and I couldn't really think of another spot to slide it in, so yeah.
Just received some incredible news. Sonic is alive!
Seriously.
That whatever it is that finished Sonic. Sorry, I'm still not used to saying that.
Alright, so all the emotional weight of the scene just before this is gone because they just immediately dropped this. No cool way of developing this or really seeing the characters feel the impact of his perceived death. Just, I'm really sad Sonic fucking died 6 months ago. Oh wait, never mind.
He's captured in the orbiting prison. My spy there says he's in a solitary confinement cell, and they've been torturing him for months.
Another moment of this game trying to have a more serious tone and it falling completely flat with just casually dropping the fact that Sonic was apparently tortured for months, but seeing the rating for this game, this is not something they can really showcase, so it just means nothing. So the Resistance's plan is to steal a shuttle at the spaceport, go to the Death Egg, and then save Sonic from his imprisonment. Meanwhile, we cut to Tails just in the city trying to repair Omega. If you didn't read the prequel comic or play episode Shadow, which I'll get to later, you have no context for this. Also, remember this line?
And Tails has just lost it.
Yeah, Tails shows no signs of this at all, just more dramatic writing that amounts to nothing.
Whoa! Chaos! Sonic, help me! Sonic? You're alive! Wait, what? Oh, you're that Sonic from another dimension, aren't you? Right, that makes sense, I think. Do you know how you got here? Maybe the power that Eggman is using is somehow affecting other dimensions. Which might work to our advantage. I mean, everything happens for a reason, right? We need to save the world, and maybe that's why you're here, to help save the world. Either way, it's still good to see you, Sonic. Heck, it's good to see any Sonic.
Fun fact, from the marketing, you might have thought that we would fight all of these villains, but this is the closest to a Chaos boss battle we get in this game. So not only did they weirdly decide to give Tails a depression arc that they do absolutely nothing with, they also completely regress him into a complete pussy. They also decide to buddy him up with Classic Sonic here. I kinda get it since Classic doesn't talk, so he needs someone in the dialogue box, so I'm kinda okay with this, if Tails wasn't needlessly separated from the rest of the crew for like half of the game. Also, yes, the Round Boy is back, but I hear you say, isn't Classic Sonic Sonic from the past? So why would he be back in this game when there are no time shenanigans happening? You stupid bitch. Your logic is nothing in comparison to the almighty power of the Retcon.
Metal Sonic was spotted near there.
Strange. I don't see him anywhere.
You see, Classic Sonic isn't Sonic from the past, he's Sonic from an alternate dimension. Completely ignore how that destroys the whole plot of Generations, but fuck it. By the way, Mania is technically a prequel to Forces, where Eggman there uses the Phantom Ruby, and when you beat the Supersonic ending, Classic goes through a wormhole at the end. Mania is made worse simply by being connected to this game.
There is no reason to resist. Savior is no I can taste your terror, child. All that anxiety and doubt. It's delicious. Give in to your fear. Flee screaming, and I'll let you live.
The clock is ticking, boss. But we don't even know where he's being held captive. Yes, we do. Eggman rebuilt the Death Egg. That's where he's keeping Sonic.
The Death Egg? Oh man, that's not good.
None of this is good, Vector. That's why it's called war. None of this is good, Vector. That's why it's called war.
Someone wrote this. After landing on the Death Egg, the Avatar makes their way through the prison hold, and we see Sonic just hanging out in his cell.
They've been torturing him for months.
Zavok then enters and decides to finish Sonic off, so we start the first boss of the game. Remember in Lost World where Zavok rode this big dragon robot, or when he turned giant and chased you? Yeah, how did Lost World do something better than this game? In this boss fight, a swarm of robot bees will attack you in a circle, which can be beaten with a simple jump, while Zavok shoots a laser at you. He will then stomp down on the ground, and if you, like me, made the mistake of thinking you need to jump here, no, in fact, you need to do nothing. And the crash will lift you into the air and give you the opportunity to get in 3 homing attacks. Literally don't have to do anything in order to get the hits in on the boss. Do this twice and Zavok will enter his second phase where the platform gets slightly smaller and you do the exact same thing and then you beat him.
Finish him!
Sonic then escapes the Death Egg, and I'll admit, the outside here with the Egg Armada is really cool. One Star Wars Trench Run reference later, and Sonic meets up with the Avatar and they escape. After regrouping, they barely linger on their reunion before Sonic and the Avatar are sent out to destroy a factory in Green Hill in a tag team section. Again, the big plot element of Sonic's defeat, capture, and alleged torture is barely even really utilized and is kinda just brushed past and from this point on ignored. Silver then warns the rest that he's fighting Infinite in the Mystic Jungle, so Sonic then goes to back him up.
Hey Vsauce, Michael here. When will you die?
Silver is facing off with Infinite and quickly gets beaten, but Sonic is able to come in for the save. We then get a pretty good back and forth between Sonic and Infinite, and I wish that more of the game was written like this.
Well, look who's back from the dead. The little blue savior. But what's that I smell? You reek of fear. Glad to see I left an impression.
That's not fear. I ran all the way over here. And you haven't left an impression. I don't know anything about you, not even your name.
You may call me Infinite, in the brief moments that remain to you.
Oh, great. See, Infinite? Now we're getting to know each other. So, what's your favorite color? Do you like long, romantic walks on the beach? What's the source of your power? You can skip the first 2 questions if you like.
The source of my power is none of your concern.
This scene is honestly a highlight of the game for me because you get the setup of that rematch combined with some actual good character dialogue, and Sonic then raises the question of what the source of Infinite's power is, and the camera points if it wasn't incredibly obvious yet. Then the second boss of the game starts. You move across a large motionless snake which might be dead? While Infinite floats in front of you, spawning rectangles of cubes around the snake. Hitting these will temporarily put you in a different state where your entire screen has a red glitchy effect and a bunch of additional hazards are spawned to make it more dangerous. If you can boost far enough, you can jump and homing attack Infinite. You will continue to do this until you reach the end of the snake where you jump up into the air and have to homing attack multiple decoys before hitting an Infinite at the end. Now, this is pretty simple to do, and one interesting thing about this boss is that you can basically just quick attack Infinite and take his entire health bar down, but you won't finish the boss until you reach the end of the snake and attack through the decoys. While being better than Zavok's boss, this isn't particularly challenging, and I feel you could do a lot more with the ideas here, which is worrying because I would argue this is Infinite's best boss fight in the game. Like any good game, you won the boss fight and then immediately get your ass kicked in the cutscene afterwards. Infinite then decides to do the villain thing and spare Sonic. This totally won't come back to bite him in the ass later.
I gotta figure out the secret of his power.
Really? How is it not the most obvious thing ever? We cut back to Classic and Tails going through Green Hill.
This is not okay. This needs to stop now. This is cancer.
They then spy on Eggman and Infinite discussing their plans, and even Eggman points out how much of an idiot Infinite is. Touching on this idea here, we get told that Eggman made prototype copies of the Phantom Ruby, but that these models are defective and could only be activated by the person who activated it, and Infinite apparently has destroyed all of them. After Infinite leaves, Classic attacks Eggman and we start the next boss. Of course, we start the boss with a classic reference and then go to the second phase.
You don't understand.
Why the Egg Dragoon? Like, I'm not the only one who finds this random as fuck, right? Out of all of Eggman's mechs and robots to use. Not even that, the boss fight is super easy. You barely have to jump to dodge the Egg Dragoon's gunfire and then jump on the boulders that Eggman launches at you. It takes almost no effort at all.
It would be a challenge to crush you here anyway. I'll round up the entire resistance sooner or later. Just you wait. Look at you, fighting like you've got a chance to win. It's adorable. Almost makes me feel bad that we're never going to do this little dance again. In just 3 short days, my plan will eliminate the bothersome lot of you. In 3 days, I'll conquer the world.
I will praise this. Mike Pollock as Eggman has consistently been the best part of these recent games, and it feels like he gets the most freedom to handle his dialogue and scenes. Classic and Tails then go to Mystic Jungle. The Resistance notices activity there and sends the Avatar to investigate. After one of the worst levels in the game, the Avatar finds the Phantom Ruby prototype that Infinite had dropped when Classic and Tails appear.
Sonic!
No joke, we fucking smash cut to them arriving at the Resistance base and Tails reuniting with Sonic.
In generations since I seen you. You okay?
Bruh.
The bad news is, Eggman said he had some plan that will destroy us all in 3 days.
3 days, huh? Well, a lot can happen in that time.
Just like you can beat this game in about 3 hours. Shadow is then apparently sighted in the city, and when Sonic goes there, is confronted. Shadow then attacks him, and Sonic just stands there for some reason and is about to get kicked in the face when Shadow comes in for the save?
Another Shadow? He just disappeared.
That was a fake.
Faker.
Shadow then reveals that the villains we saw earlier in the game and were shown in the trailers are actually illusions created by the Phantom Ruby, and I honestly think, out of all the speculation and theories there were before the game launched, having the villains be duplicates is one of the lamest options they could have picked. I would have taken mind control over this explanation. Also, just like Chaos, this is technically the closest we get to a Shadow boss in this game.
Replicas. The problem is, they may not be real, but their powers are as
No, they're not. After that section and reveal, you're probably wondering where Shadow has been, since his heel turn was one of the most anticipated parts of the game's story, and with the reveal of the villains being duplicates, Shadow has been missing for half of the game. So what was he doing? Now, on the side of the main story, Sega also released Episode Shadow, which is a prequel DLC that shows Shadow's role in the story and reveals Infinite's backstory. In Episode Shadow, you get 3 more stages that are mostly more difficult versions of stages in the main game. You also get to play as Shadow both in these stages and in certain stages of the main game. Shadow is mostly cosmetic, he has different animations but plays exactly the same as Sonic, apart from being able to dash through a line of enemies with his homing attack that only gets utilized a couple of times. A small nitpick for me is that I really like Shadow's default run where he skates ahead, but when you boost, which is what you'll be doing for 90% of these stages, Shadow does this sort of burst flight which looks less interesting. Now in both the game and the Team Dark prequel comic, Team Dark is investigating an Eggman base. Omega is charging ahead and Shadow is going after him while Rouge is on comms. While Shadow is making his way over to the base, Omega encounters Infinite and is then destroyed, and in the game ends up in the city where the stage is, but is in the desert in the comic, so why this scene didn't take place in Sandhill kinda baffles me.
The world's most powerful robot is no more a challenge than crab meat. Tell me what you did to Omega. Come now, Shadow. A long-awaited reunion, and still you spout such nonsense. I don't know you. You say you do not know me, and yet I remember you so very well. To you, it was simply another in a long list of Eggman bases you tore down without a second thought.
They really just did not have time for cutscenes, did they? So this is it. After months of speculation, anticipation, and theorizing, we finally have Infinite's backstory. After the events of Mania, the Phantom Ruby was sent through dimensions, I guess, and landed outside Eggman's base. While Eggman was researching the Ruby, he's attacked by a gang of Jackal mercenaries. Nervous because of his limited defense systems, Eggman accidentally causes a ton of defense robots to appear and they surround the mercenaries. Their leader attacks Eggman and almost strikes him down, but Eggman blocks his blow with the Ruby, which causes both of them to see a world in ruin. Noticing that they have the same goal, Eggman offers the mercenary leader and his squad a place in his empire, and he agrees. Sometime later in Mystic Jungle, Shadow annihilates the Jackal squad off screen and makes his way to Eggman's factory. He's then confronted by the squad's leader, whose face is obscured in the game, but not in the comic for some reason. The leader tries to attack him, and well...
Worthless. Don't show your pathetic face around me ever again. I'm shaking. Me? Afraid. Pathetic. Me. He's calling me weak. No, I am not weak. I'm not weak. I am not weak.
After throwing a temper tantrum, the leader then puts on a mask to hide his unsightly face, which was already scarred, and then is given the Phantom Ruby. This backstory is fucking garbage and is honestly embarrassingly delivered. It is such an incredibly disappointing reveal that deflates all the build-up and potential this character could have, and that's pretty bad when Infinite was set up as the big new main antagonist of the game. Shadow then gets warped into Green Hill, and similar to the Infinite and Sonic confrontation in Mystic Jungle, this part of the game with the dialogue is genuinely interesting.
This is where Omega was destroyed. There's no sign of it here.
Sure seems that way. Probably because it never really happened.
What?
Affirmative. I have never known to defeat defeat.
Omega?
I am not defeated. I am not weak. I am not weak. I am not weak. I am not weak. I am not weak.
Where Shadow is sort of being messed with by Rouge and Omega speaking in a very weird and uncomfortable way, which is then revealed to all be an illusion by Infinite. Infinite then babbles a bit more and then just leaves. The game then indicates that a short time later, the start of the game where Sonic was defeated happened, even though the question of where Shadow was during that and the next 6 months is never answered and he just wasn't there with the others. Probably because if he was, the big duplicates twist couldn't have happened, even though that was dumb as well. Returning to the main story, the Resistance decided to launch a massive attack on Metropolis. The Avatar is fighting their way through the city when Infinite appears and starts messing with the stage layout, which is apparently screwing over the other characters, and they're forced to retreat.
80% of our forces have been wiped out!
Good job, genius.
More ants to crush. I wonder if this world can offer me a real challenge. Huh? And as if to answer, the world sends me a trembling child. Are you going to fight and die here, or run away in fear again? Fine. I will teach you fear, then pain. And then, well, at least the fear and pain will end.
The second Infinite boss is different from the rest of the bosses since it takes place on a 2D plane. Infinite will send small waves of homing cubes after you that, when hit, will spawn cannons. There are also enemy bots here for some reason. I don't know why, since they pose no real threat in this boss. Get him to his second phase, he will summon large blocks of cubes that need a little pre-running to efficiently dodge. Your job is basically to dodge the cubes until Infinite tries to dash you, which opens him up for a rope attack, which is what I think the game designers had in mind, but the big flaw of this boss is that you don't have to do that at all. Remember when I said that Burst was the best Wispon in the game? One of the reasons for that is, unlike the others, it does continuous direct damage. So when Infinite dashes down, instead of rope attacking him, which you'd have to do about 4 times to beat him, you can just flamethrower him and melt his health bar like it's nothing, cutting the boss time to like less than half. I fucking love this thing. After the boss fight, Infinite has the Avatar at his mercy when they're saved by the Phantom Ruby prototype. Infinite is visibly confused by this, but instead of looking into this, or actually finishing the job, he just leaves again. Like, dude, you wonder why you aren't winning and just keep doing this shit. After that encounter, the Resistance devises a plan to figure out the power behind Infinite and head to the chemical plant to access Eggman's database. There they discover that the Phantom Ruby needs an immense amount of power and devise that the Death Egg is that power source. Then Metal Sonic is just spotted in the city, and Sonic and the Avatar go over there to stop him.
Why would they bother making a fake out of something that already isn't real?
Good point.
Watch out! Metal Sonic was spotted near there.
Strange. I don't see him anywhere.
Metal Sonic's boss consists of running after him while cubes create electric lines to dodge. He will then dash at you and after that be vulnerable to attack. You have to just spam the homing attack on the debris around him in order to get him. His second phase is the same thing, but slightly harder. When you take him down, you'll then double boost him for the victory. So, summed up, not a great boss. Also, apart from the double boost at the end, this entire boss is basically just a modern Sonic stage with the Avatar barely being needed. Another thing that bugs me is that unlike the other bosses, this gets counted as a stage because of the very small intro bit with the Death Egg robot, which annoys the fuck out of me.
Hey, that was great! We're like a well-oiled machine. Fighting a well-oiled machine. Huh?
The Resistance then kicks into gear their plan to destroy the Death Egg. The Avatar creates a distraction by engaging this massive crab enemy.
Mr. Squidward, I should kick your fucking ass!
Afterwards, Sonic makes his way through the chemical plant and shuts down the Death Egg's weapon systems. Why said weapon systems wouldn't be on the Death Egg themselves, I don't know.
Resistance pests and their clever little plots. They're like something on your shoe that you can't wipe off. 5 more hours before the plan is executed. Infinite, let's make a tactical retreat so that we can remobilize our forces.
And by tactical retreat, you mean to say, flee with our tails between our legs. I'm quite displeased about this, Doctor.
I'm sorry, mister. I could kill you, but I'm not gonna cause I don't feel like it, so I'ma just leave. You could have prevented this, you dumbass. After arriving in Metropolis, Sonic encounters Eggman and we get introduced to yet another wasted concept. Infinite arrives and releases a small black orb that grows into a black hole that sucks in Sonic and the Avatar. Tails then remarks how that shouldn't be possible since they destroyed the Death Egg and the Phantom Ruby should be powerless. Eggman then says that he predicted that, and he created a backup underneath Metropolis as some 1000 IQ Gigabrain move. You're probably thinking, wait, where the fuck did Sonic and the Avatar just go? Well, dear viewer, they were absorbed into something called Null Space, a void where nothing exists and you can never escape from. Then we see Sonic and the Avatar running on a path of randomly building cubes, double boost, and get out of it in like less than 10 seconds. What the fuck was the point of any of that? This had to be some longer level concept that was cut for time. Cut dialogue certainly seems to indicate it.
Prison that goes on forever, huh? At least getting sent here taught me something. Nothing beats realizing that you're not alone.
The two of them then fight to the top of the tower where Eggman is, and then Eggman just retreats, and that's that. All of our heroes then gather for the final assault on the Eggman Empire Fortress, a big grey landscape filled with darkly colored machines and buildings. Everyone then gathers for a big fight scene. On one side, Infinite and his lame illusion army against the Resistance and their copy and paste army of Deviantart rejects.
Replicas. The problem is, they may not be real, but their powers are as formidable as the originals.
Hey, Infinite! Long time no see.
I trust you're all ready for oblivion. If you're not, oh well. What? Who dares?
Target reconfirmed. Extermination mode initiated. Payback inevitable.
Oh look, Omega's back. Okay, that's that. That's the payoff. That was what all of that was for. Eggman then says to set their plan in motion, and I genuinely could not in a million years predict what Eggman's plan here would be. Infinite summons a fucking sun into the sky. Like an actual sun. Everyone is understandably pissing themselves and trying to argue the logistics of the sun's existence. So Eggman's big plan is to drop the sun on everyone and wipe them out. There is a big problem with this. Somehow this sun, being this close, is not just barbecuing all of them right now. Eggman somehow does not realize that if the sun falls on everyone, that kills both him and his entire military force as well, since I do not see how he is somehow excluded from this thing falling on them while he is a kilometer away from the maximum. Tails then notices the Phantom Ruby prototype reacting to the sun and devises a plan to have the Avatar make the sun go away. While Eggman is counting down, the Avatar makes their way to the sun and grapples into it and makes it disappear. I want to reiterate that the physics of this sun make no fucking sense, and that Eggman nor his forces were a safe distance away from it, so he would have also just been wiped out and did not think about that at all, but whatever, I guess. The Resistance then makes their counterattack and Sonic confronts Infinite. The third and final Infinite boss is... I don't know how to say this without getting mad, so I'll just say it. It's a slightly more difficult version of Metal Sonic's. The difference being that instead of electric lines, he summons spinning cube crosses that you have to dodge. He'll even dash at you the exact same way. After the first phase, the Phantom Ruby recharges from the sun summoning and the Avatar joins Sonic. Just continue the boss as is, and then you double boost and beat Infinite. Yep. That's the final Infinite boss. Apart from one attack, it's the exact same as Metal's, and it's not like that one was anything to write home about. Infinite then comments on how he should not be able to be defeated, and then gets pulled away, and he's never seen again. Main spotlight of the villain trailers, propped up as mysterious, super powerful, a massive threat, and big new villain for the franchise, and left the impression of a wet fart. Holy shit, that was dumb.
You never fail to surprise me, Sonic. I didn't believe Infinite could lose. Victory will be so much sweeter when I defeat you. Don't think this is over yet, you blue nuisance. My plan just went into overtime.
Oh my god, how many backup plans do you fucking have? Sonic and the Avatar then make their way to the Phantom Ruby power core to depower it once and for all. On the way, everyone comments on that this is where Infinite was created and brought into the world, even though he wasn't created and was a person before, but this story is already so inconsistent, who really gives a shit, I guess.
We did it! Eggman's army is officially butt-kicked! We won! Come on, now what? Can we ever just win and have that be the end of it?
You're telling me here.
The fortress reactor was just a decoy.
Oh my fucking god, how many decoys and backup plans do you have? This isn't smart. This is absolutely ridiculous. So not only was the last power source also a decoy, the Phantom Ruby doesn't have an actual power source, so Eggman just built 3 fucking decoy power sources. How many resources do you have? The dialogue here doesn't give a feeling of hyping up or like we've reached the end point. It feels like we got to this point 5 times before and are just repeating it again. It's annoying as hell. So now we arrive at the final boss of the game. Eggman's Death Egg robot. I won't lie, the design is pretty cool and I like the idea of what we're going with here. You start off as classic, doing a harder repeat of the Egg Dragoon boss because of course, more reused bosses. Then move over to the Avatar in a sort of enhanced version of the Zavok Boss, where the biggest challenge here is the bullshit platform pads that drop due to the Death Egg robot's arm slam. I will also repeat here, as with the second Infinite boss, just use the flamethrower. Don't rope attack. Rope attacking is for plebs. After that, the robot does its best Thomas Kane from Alien impression. Then we transition to the final part of the boss fight, where all 3 of our characters are running together in Null Space fighting... That's a Sonic Colors boss again, isn't it? That's just a Nega Wisp armor again, isn't it? Fuck it, whatever, fuck it, sure, whatever, let's get this over with. So then the 3 of them, to be honest, this is basically just modern Sonic with Classic and the Avatar there for flair during the homing attack. Run ahead, avoiding the pattern of flames and laser shot at them, and then spam the ever-living fuck out of the homing attack. They then unite and triple boost through the Death Egg robot, finishing it off. All of the illusions start disappearing, the Deviantart OCs all rejoice, and everyone has a happy ending. Everyone that matters then groups up and says goodbye to Classic. I felt nothing here. We are then subjected to the most National Geographic United Nations Disney Channel level speech I have ever heard in my life.
Alright guys, it's time we cleaned up the mess that Eggman left this world in. And I'm not talking about those illusions he dreamed up for us. We need to fix the real world we all live in.
True that.
Come on, let's go! Yeah!
I want to unalive myself. Then, I kid you not, we have a post-credit scene where everyone is hanging out saying they'll still be needed for the future, while Sonic is just off to himself watching the sun go down. Our Avatar then approaches for a little one-sided chit-chat.
Hey, you're taking off too? I was thinking the same thing. You gonna keep moving forward? No matter what, yeah? You and I aren't so different. See you later, buddy.
Before I wrap up, I wanted to highlight a specific part of this which I really feel deserves some attention. That thing being the Phantom Ruby. From the first time we see it in Mania, it is shrouded in mystery, only showcasing that it is able to create illusions of what the holder desires, from as little as additional units to entire stages and even a giant sun now. This thing is what bridges the gap between Mania and Forces and establishes Classic as an alternate dimension Sonic and no longer Sonic from the past. This thing is also the most confusing and convoluted MacGuffin I think I've seen in a video game. Instead of keeping things simple and having Infinite be the only one who is fully able to control the Phantom Ruby to its fullest extent, they introduced these prototypes which were apparently defective and are the sole reason why the Resistance aren't burnt to a crisp at the end. These were seemingly introduced to give your avatar more importance to the story, I'm assuming, but when they get so randomly tossed into the story with little attention, they're just left as really poorly implemented story devices. I mean, Infinite was tasked to destroy them, and somehow, even though there was no interference from the Resistance, these weren't just removed already, but Infinite was apparently carrying at least 2 on him from what we see in the cutscenes, forgets how to count so one can go unattended for, and were not just destroyed immediately, but instead, he decided to take at least 1 with him and destroy it when he's with Eggman, instead of just destroying all of them then and there in Mystic Jungle. For real, you are the biggest brainlet in existence, and you are probably 100% responsible for your side losing, and I know someone might make the point of, well, he's obviously overconfident because of his strength, and he thinks that nothing could possibly stop him in any way, leading to him being sloppy. And while I see some legitimacy in that, the decisions Infinite makes here do not even feel justified because of confidence or ego, but just because he makes a ton of unnecessary decisions that don't benefit him or Eggman in any real way. He just does whatever he wants for shits and giggles. Not even talking yet about my biggest gripe, which is the inconsistency with how both Infinite and the Ruby get addressed and used. The game makes the point of referring to Infinite and the Ruby as creations, even though Mania, the comics, and episode Shadow all clearly showcase that they aren't, and it's really weird to refer to them as that.
This is where Eggman built Infinite. It's so sad. What a lonely place to be brought into the world.
Like, why is this here? This doesn't get addressed or referenced. It's just part of the dialogue as if this is true, but it's literally not. How does a story this shallow have this many inconsistencies? Do I even need to mention the power source and decoy situation? Listen to this and tell me this makes sense. So Eggman leaves information behind on his database in Chemical Plant that details that the Death Egg provides power for the Phantom Ruby, which you then need to go to another base in Chemical Plant in order to shut down the Death Egg's weapon systems. Why does this work like this? Why wouldn't the controls for the Death Egg's weapons be on the Death Egg itself? Like, that makes no fucking sense. Then destroy the Death Egg, except he made a backup power source underneath Metropolis. Except, no, actually, there's another power source with similar crystals to the Phantom Ruby, except gotcha, that was a decoy, and the Phantom Ruby doesn't even need a power source. It does need to recharge, however, which is shown in the final fight with Infinite, who has been using the Phantom Ruby, except when he's defeated, you can simply take it from him when you want to, and losing him means nothing to your plan, even though you gave this incredibly powerful weapon to this mercenary you barely even knew. Then, with the help of his Death Egg robot, he can permanently power the Phantom Ruby, so it doesn't need to recharge at all, and you can do whatever the fuck you want with it. So you chuck boulders and try to punch your enemies. What is your fucking plan? It feels like the writers thought they were showing Eggman to be incredibly smart with the amount of backups he had, but the amount of just random bullshit and rug pulls he does just comes across as ridiculous. Seriously, how is this plan efficient at all? What is the point of these power sources when they don't benefit you? You are just throwing resources at the wall. What do you possibly have to gain from this? Did they just run out of level ideas, so just said fuck it and pulled these out to justify stages? Because it is really stupid. At the end of this game, I cannot express how disappointed and empty I felt. About 4 years of waiting since the last game, and that game being Lost World, over a year of drip-fed gameplay and trailers, only to have finished it after about 4 hours and just sitting in my chair at 1 AM feeling completely empty. The gameplay in every aspect is a downgrade. Both modern and classic are just straight up worse than Generations, and the Avatar and tag team stages are just as bad. The physics are broken, the enemies are pointless cannon fodder, your attacks are completely busted and poorly balanced. The biggest threat is the terrible level design, which will try to keep you on a set path for as long as it possibly can before catapulting you away or letting you fall into the abyss because you moved an inch off of the set path. The side characters are all written the same. Dumb, overly dramatic, with almost no real outstanding personality, and that hurts, because the radio system is really neat, but these characters just have nothing of value to say. The returning villains are pathetic and wasted, which should have been an amazing return of iconic antagonists, and Zavok instead was 2 weak boss fights, 2 cutscene instant kills, and the most underperforming antagonist I think we may have gotten yet. The only saving part here was Mike Pollock's performance. That's it. Infinite is a disgrace. A cool concept, design, voice, and moveset completely wasted on a poorly written joke of a tragic character, I guess. I just remember all the speculation and theories when he was first announced, and just feeling sad after seeing what he turned out to be. I have no idea if he will ever return in a mainline game after that book panel seemingly confirms him being dead, so I guess we'll have to see what the future holds. You want a good Resistance story? Read Archie or the IDW comics, they're better in almost every conceivable way than this. Closing this off with remembering what the mood was after this game. Waiting for so long for this felt absolutely awful, and I remember being in denial for months after this game released, but eventually you just have to accept it. This game had an amazing concept, but an absolutely terrible execution. I know that after this, Mania Plus was a small bit of good, and Teen Sonic Racing, while pretty flawed, was fun. Shame how poorly they planned its support and how quickly it died off, because I remember really enjoying that game. Colors Ultimate and Origins had troublesome launches, but were received fairly fine, and I absolutely blame no one for how skeptical and scared they were when we were getting the announcements and reveal for the next major title. But I can thankfully say that that game made up for everything I just said. But that's for the next time. Thanks for listening to my stupid, insane ramblings, and take care, you beautiful bastards.